So today we are going to talk about constructivism. And last week's assignment, I know some of you had a lot of fun with it, some of you struggled with it. And that's the idea of a constructivist classroom. It's creating that zone of proximal development, that environment where things are a little bit challenging or very challenging, and then providing the help that everyone needs to rise to the challenge. And most of you did. And some of you maybe gave up a little bit, but that's okay because it wasn't about the quality of your animation. That's what you were graded on. The purpose of that whole assignment was to have you experience the constructivist classroom and to think about what was your reaction to that? What happened when you needed help? Did you get frustrated? How did you feel? And what was your reaction to that? What kind of help did you seek? What kind of help did you get? What kind of help did you wish that you would have sought or wish that you would have gotten? It probably was a very different experience for those of you who didn't come to class on Tuesday and Thursday. Those of you who just watched the video, it's a different kind of help than when it's just-in-time help right in class. So we're going to have a conversation about that, a big conversation about the what you experienced in this constructivist classroom, because that was the whole purpose for doing that. And I'm going to share a few of your animations because some of you really put a lot of time and effort into them, and they were very clever. So we're talking about constructivism, and we're kind of putting a lot of other concepts that we learned into play here. So this was a zone of proximal development, something that we learned about before. You learned about some new schemas. You assimilated some things, you accommodated some things. So you used your cognitive development in a lot of ways last week. And what I tried to do was provide this cognitive coaching because you needed some coaching with something that was challenging for many of you. So our lesson objectives for last week and this week is for you to understand constructivism and the process of cognitive coaching. I want you to know and understand what scaffolding is, and I want you to be able to develop a task analysis, and we'll talk more about that later today. But let's just start with this. How is understanding or knowledge constructed? Because this is a constructivist classroom, so how can we construct knowledge? So I'm going to send you off to some breakout rooms for a couple of minutes. I'm just going to randomly assign you to groups of 2 or 3. And I just want you to talk about how can we construct knowledge or understanding. And then we'll just talk about it for a minute or two and then come back. So off you go. Okay, welcome back. I just want to check in with a couple of the rooms to check in with what you're thinking and what you're talking about in your groups. So knowledge or understanding, when I'm talking about being constructed, how can we build on knowledge? So when you're learning a new sport, learning a profession or a trade, or learning a new musical instrument, how can we build on that? And how can we construct that understanding in these skills or in knowledge? So let's start with Chelsea in room 7. Chelsea, what were you talking about in your room?
We were talking a lot about being able to work with other people or like a group of people to kind of get like a new perspective on whatever you're learning about.
Okay, good, good. All right, let's hear from Josie. Josie, what were you talking about in your room?
In our room, we were basically talking about using our brain, like being able to critically think or being able to be creative as ways that you can construct knowledge, like just thinking on a deeper level.
Okay, all right. So thinking critically or creatively, and that helps you? And we're going to be really exploring creative thinking, critical thinking more in the next couple of weeks. Good. Okay, Haley, what were you talking about in your room?
We're talking about like kind of going off what everyone else already said, but experience and like if it's like something like a sport, like just going out there and doing it.
Okay.
I definitely think like doing it with other people would help. And then also just like research.
Okay. So doing it and having others help you do it and going researching, going to find something out. Okay,
Yes.
good. Um, all right, let's hear from one more room. Emma, what were you talking about in your room? Emma, maybe her microphone isn't on. Erin, can you tell us what you were talking about in your room? How about Maddie?
Yeah, in my room, we were kind of talking about like this model we use at work with the trainers of
Mhm.
explain, show, practice, feedback. And I think that kind of ties in with what everyone else kind of is saying, with just kind of like experiencing it, working with other people, getting perspectives, feedback, and just like using critical thinking skills.
Okay, great. Thank you, Maddie. I like that model there. I just wrote it down because I'm going to use it. There's another model that I use often, but I really like this one. And this really is, we're going to talk about cognitive coaching, and this is a great example of how to operationalize cognitive coaching of explaining, showing, practicing feedback. Excellent. Thank you, Maddie. I'm so glad I called on you. All right. So that is, how do we teach? So we looked at sports and things in the last slide, and looking at this one, learning a math strategy or a thinking process, learning how to read a map, or learning how to read. These are processes. These are complex processes. So how do we teach these things? And here is the thing about teaching someone something complex like learning how to read or learning how to think critically or think creatively or just learning how to do long division or something or how to read a map. This isn't just simple that you just show it once and then you're done. Okay, learning how to say you're training someone and showing them how to, let's say you're working at an ice cream place and you're showing them how to fill an ice cream cone. Okay, that is a simpler process. You still can do this explain, show, practice, feedback, but it'd probably be a short time. Within probably 15 minutes, you could do a good job of training someone on how to fill an ice cream cone and make it look like it's supposed to look at Dairy Queen or whatever. But when you're going to something more complex, you need a lot more steps. And I have to say, I really want to talk about this for a moment. Um, this one skill that I'm going to talk to you today is probably the most useful skill that I've ever learned in all my undergraduate classes. So, in my undergraduate classes where I was learning to be a teacher, I learned a lot, but this one skill was the one that I still use, through my 30 some years of teaching in the K through 12 environment and over 15 years of higher education. This is the one I use every time I'm planning a lesson. So I wanted to really go over it with you, give you an example, and have you create one. This is called a task analysis. And I learned this in my special education classes. Okay, so I was a dual major in special ed and elementary ed. And the special education classes were really the ones where was taught how to teach, like to really break down the process of teaching and learning and how to really help students learn. And this one skill is absolutely essential because all these other things that we've been learning about kind of go around this. Okay, in task analysis, you're able to take something complex like teaching someone how to read and really break it down into smaller parts and to really like analyzing a task and looking to see what are all the smaller parts and what are some parts their students might struggle with and what kind of help might I have ready. I have already thought about it ahead of time. This is something students might struggle with. This is something I'm going to do to help them get through that struggle in this larger complex process. So that's why I really want to spend the time today talking about last week and going through, here's what task analysis is. This is how you can do it, give you some examples, and then giving you an opportunity to do that, to do a task analysis. So that's what we're going to be doing today and focusing on. So when in certain situations like training, Maddie mentioned training. You usually have an expert who teaches a novice. Okay, someone who really knows the skill and they can help that novice. And the novice is an apprentice. So we can call this cognitive apprenticeship. So it's not just apprenticeship for learning a skill or a trade, but apprenticeship for the cognitive processes. We can also call it cognitive coaching. So that's what we're going to really be thinking about and practicing today is when you are coaching someone or teaching them something that is complex when it comes to cognitive processes. Like it's not just something that's physical. You can think of physical things and break down those, but there's also cognitive processes involved. That's when we have cognitive coaching and cognitive apprenticeship. They're similar techniques. So in cognitive coaching, just like Maddie was saying, there's this process, explain, show, practice, and feedback. Here's another model for cognitive apprenticeship. This has a couple more steps, but both of those are good steps. The thing, though, is that you want to make thinking visible. So if I'm going to be your cognitive coach, I want to, in my explaining or showing or demonstrating that modeling, I want to talk about not just what I'm doing, but what I'm thinking. So in that modeling, you want to help people go through their thinking and to see what is it that I should be thinking in this step. So in this modeling and coaching process, you are explaining and modeling and showing, and then you're providing that scaffolding. The scaffolding is the just-in-time help. Like I'm noticing that you need this right now, so I'm going to give it to you. The next time we do go through this, you might not need it, so I'm going to take that scaffolding away. But it's the things that I'm going to provide for you to help you until you don't need them anymore. And the articulation of, I'm going to be very specific with the directions in this is what I'm thinking, this is what I'm doing, this is why I'm doing it, this is what I'm going to do next. And then that whole reflection and exploration. So it really starts with exploration and then goes through this process, and you can keep going through this process. But there's many different ways to look at cognitive apprenticeship. It doesn't have to be just this process. But this is the one I'm using to demonstrate a couple of examples for you. So we're going to do some sharing in a couple minutes where you're going to talk about your process of when you were looking at that, completing the assignment from last week. Okay, it doesn't matter whether you were successful or not successful in completing the project. If you at least attempted the project, you went through some processes, you went through some thinking. What helped you? What got in your way? And what did you need that you didn't get? What suggestions do you have that could have been there from some kind of scaffolding that could have helped you? So I'm going to we'll do this now. I'm going to put you into some breakout rooms. And in those breakout rooms, we'll go back into the breakout rooms you were in and talk to your partner or partners about your thinking process and your process with trying to create that animation. What kind of feelings did you go through? What kind of thoughts did you go through? We're talking about your cognitive process. So I'm going to send you off, and it's going to be a little bit longer now because I really want you to talk about this, and then we're going to come back and talk about it as a group. So I'll give you a few minutes to really hash this out and be honest with your feelings, because remember, I did this to give you a difficult situation. Some of you took the challenge and rose to the occasion. Some of you maybe were a little frustrated, or maybe decided you didn't want to put the time and effort into finishing it up. But why? I'm more interested in why than I am in whether you successfully finished your name animation. So let's talk about that in our groups, and then we'll come back and talk as a class. So off you go. Okay, welcome back. I would like to hear from some of you. So we're talking to each other, but I didn't get to hear what you were talking about. So I really do want to hear, what are some things that you went through in this process? What are some things that I did in the to cognitively coach you? Some things that worked, some things that didn't work. And what you would have liked. Okay, so let's start with, can I hear from Justin? Justin, what was your experience last week?
So my experience was, for the most part, I followed the instructions they provided on the website to get my name, and then I learned how to make the letters larger and change the font and stuff like that. When it came to adding like music, I think I used some outside sources like YouTube, and they had
Okay.
tutorials.
All right, so the scaffolding that was provided by Google for CS First, in CS First, that's what you used, like you followed those directions and then used YouTube?
Yes.
Good. Okay, so that was very savvy of you to go outside what they provided for you. All right, good. All right, can I hear from Bosco? What was your experience?
So at first I was kind of nervous since coding just seemed pretty complicated
Mhm.
at first. And it's something that I'm not very comfortable with doing. But with the hints that from the website and from you showing us on your screen how to do certain things really
Mhm.
helped me a lot. Um it felt pretty rewarding being able to be successful in like coding and getting something to do, like to do something a certain way. And I just felt like I could have made my animation better though, if I just remembered how to like get my bear to like move across my screen.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. And you did get him to move, you just didn't have his legs moving. But that wish that you could do a certain thing. Now, if I showed you again, because this is one of those complex things, it's not something I was just going to teach in 15 minutes. So it's over time, like each time I could show you, oh, here's the thing, because I showed you in class, but it was real quick. So that's good. I'm glad you are explaining this, because that's the kind of thing when you're teaching something complex like coding, there's so many little details. I can show you this little thing or that little thing, but it is rewarding, isn't it? When you do something that's hard and you accomplish it.
Yes, definitely for sure. Yeah, I just really felt overwhelmed by the amount of information that you're giving us. Like you said, you trying to teach it like this complex thing really fast. And so
Yeah.
I kind of forgot like how to really get my animation to move. So
Yeah, yeah, because it's too much information at once. I really prefer doing this in a face-to-face class because I could go around and help each individual with the one thing they need. And trying to show that, giving like five things at once, and it's too much information at once. So I'm glad you brought that up, because that's one of the things that can get in the way of learning, giving too much information at once. Thank you, Bosco. Okay, how about Adam? What was your experience? Adam, are you with us? Okay, let's hear. I'll come back to him. How about Jada? What was your experience, Jada?
In my group, we kind of had like a similar experience, kind of like a trial and error kind of thing. And I wasn't in class on Thursday, but one of my group members, they talked about when you had the little videos, like the little tutorials to do extra things after they asked questions, and
Mhm.
how that really helped as well when it came to like working on their project.
So that just in time help. And yeah,
Yeah.
you brought up a good point about trial and error. It's like the thing with coding is it is this big problem solving environment where you wish something, I wish I could make this bear walk. And then you try different things and then you see what works and what doesn't work. And it is difficult to do in just like 1 hour, but so many of you really accomplished a lot in that project. Some of you, I think, um, worked on it outside of those 2 classes because I can see from how much work you put into it. So hopefully that was because you were having fun and you really wanted to solve the problem. All right, let's hear from just a couple more. How about I'm just randomly picking people here. Natalia, what was your experience?
Kind of like Jada's group, we had a similar experience of like being a little frustrated at first.
Mhm,
For me, I know that like having all the information at us was like kind of overwhelming, but
mhm,
for me personally, it kind of helped just because like I didn't want to do like the exact same things that you were showing or like
mhm,
the scaffolding like the CS first was
mhm,
showing the like being able to like pick apart like different tips that you were giving us to like
mhm.
help my individual work I think helped me.
Okay.
Um but like ultimately like I succeeded at like the main thing that I wanted to do. I just didn't do like the last part
Mhm.
because I couldn't figure it out, but like
Okay.
instead I just added something else that was like a little challenging, but like I knew I could do like to
Okay.
make it like more interesting. But yeah.
Oh, it's so interesting to hear, for me to hear your thoughts, and thank you for sharing that. All right, I have one last thing that I'm going to ask everyone to do in the chat. In the chat, would everyone please give me one bit of advice of, well, maybe 2 things. One, what should I do the same? Let's say, and when I do this assignment next year, what should I keep the same? And what do you suggest I do differently to help everyone be more successful with this project? So, one thing, what should I do the same, and what should I do differently? I'd appreciate any feedback you can give me. Take more time. All right. Thank you. I really appreciate your ideas, and I will. And this isn't just for this assignment. The ideas that you're saying are actually things you can think about for any time that you're in a situation where you are teaching something, coaching something, or helping someone learn something that's complex. So these ideas are really not just for this project, but kind of generic. I'm going to actually make a copy of these ideas and post them so you can see what these good ideas are. Okay. I can give you copy of examples. Sky, that's a great idea. So I'm going to take all of your advice, um, and you really helped me. Thank you, and help each other. So I'm going to read through them some more when you're going through your next assignment in a couple of minutes, and really read through those and see what I can do. Maybe I can even do some of it today. All right, thank you. All right, let's talk about scaffolding for a minute. You have in Google Classroom, I asked you to watch a video about scaffolding that's in Edpuzzle. So let's watch it together. A couple of you already watched it, but it doesn't hurt to watch it a second time. I've watched this video a few times myself, just to be very clear about what scaffolding is. So let's go into live mode. And if you will go into Google Classroom and click on the scaffolding video. The scaffolding is a huge piece of cognitive coaching. Yeah, you know what? I think I'm going to have fun doing what some of you are saying, more videos on specific techniques. I think I would have fun doing a project like that, doing some demonstration for each thing, maybe making one page that has links to all the different videos. Love that idea. Okay, just waiting for anyone else to come into the scaffolding. Okay, I'm going to get started, but you can still come in. All right, let's look about what scaffolding is.
You may have heard the term scaffolding as it applies to big building remodels and renovations. But did you know it also has to do with child development? Scaffolding refers to structured assistance or guidance that helps someone build confidence and push their limits to develop new skills and accomplish tasks. As the learner's ability.
So think about Vygotsky's theory here, where the peer or the expert provides help to assist children in advancing their cognitive development. Okay, so pay attention to what this actually means and what it looks like.
Abilities increase, the amount of help decreases accordingly. This is one way you can support your child's autonomy. Autonomy is just a big word for independence. We all want our kiddos to be able to do things themselves, right? Parents who provide choices for their child or provide opportunities or suggestions are often called autonomy supportive parents, in that they help support and foster the child's growth towards independence. The key is to give enough support so that the child can complete the task, but not so much that they are no longer challenged to expand their skill set. While your infant is eating, let them make a mess as they try to get the food in their mouth on their own. When your preschooler is coloring way outside the lines, don't let your own coloring neuroses get in the way of them making their masterpiece. When your school-age child is learning to write and keeps writing those letters backwards, gently show them how you would do it so they can use you as an example. Let them make little mistakes that they can learn from. It will likely take longer to get tasks done at first, but
so sometimes it's hard to watch a child struggle, but if you jump in too early and help them, you actually teach them learned helplessness. So, and you take away that opportunity for them to grow. So think about, being careful to not interfere too quickly.
But over time, they will become so much more capable than if they constantly relied on your help. If they are struggling and continue to get frustrated or are constantly asking for your help, there are ways that you can be there as a sense of support. You can give tips that provide support, but still allow them to be independent in the task. You can also break down a tougher task into smaller parts that can be learned gradually. Take cooking, for example. When your child is young, they may just do little things like pour ingredients or stir, but then they learn to use a butter knife, and then a sharp knife, and eventually can cook all by themselves. As a parent, it is important to strive towards the goal of supporting our children and guiding them towards autonomy. As much as we may want to micromanage every detail, it is more fun to watch our children learn and grow independently. But as always, be there as a means of support for your child, helping nurture that relationship.
Okay, it doesn't just apply to children, but adults too. Pay attention to ways your professors may have done this for you in your classes, where sometimes they came to your rescue and sometimes they let you struggle.
This video was brought to you by the folks at Hello Joey.
Okay, so that's scaffolding. And I wanted to just share that with you and really take that into consideration, because that really is what we're talking about when we're doing this cognitive coaching. So when we plan for cognitive coaching, the best thing you can do is to plan ahead. If you are going to teach someone something complex, you really need to plan ahead. And it helps so much if you break down the task for all the little pieces that go into it, and then think about what someone might struggle with, which with certain pieces. Certain pieces might be straightforward, and others you might want to really think about. So for example, some of you suggested that I make little videos. For example, with the bear walking, I showed it real quick, and it didn't stick. So it might have been more helpful if I would have thought of making a little video for each one of those things, and then you could go back and refer to it, because I showed you so much at once, and some of you were overwhelmed. See how this is helping with, even though I've done this process several times, you've come up with different ideas of things that I can do to really make this project more accessible to more people that are doing it. So task analysis is actually taking a complex thing and breaking it down into these smaller pieces. So here's an example for this one. I looked at the steps that you would have to do to make your animation. So you really had to see the big picture and understand the task. So what I thought for scaffolding I would do is show you examples of completed projects. Now, someone mentioned I could have provided you with the opportunity to actually see those examples, and that would be a good idea, because you could actually go into their code and look at their code. So I'm going to do that from now on, is actually not just show the examples, but provide links to those examples so that you can get into their code. But see, that by showing the example, it gives you the big picture of the task of what I want you to accomplish. Then the other thing that's hard is just logging in to CS First in Scratch. Okay, they have made it easier over the last few years, but just that whole process of signing in and making sure you click on the right things. And if someone gets behind and they're not logged in when I start with directions, it could be really frustrating. So I tried to have written directions on the slide and also create a video to show you how to do that. And that was the recording of the lesson that someone could watch. You could rewind and watch it over to make sure you could log in. Because if you can't log in, you can't do anything else. And then show you, again, looking at that big picture, but introduce the project in the interface. So modeled it in class, showed it to you live, and also have a video demonstration through recording the lesson. And then adding letters in the background. So I forget, I think it might have been Izzy who said, just do the basics. So starting with basics. So just how to add your letters. So what we did is I modeled it, but I also did something that, like Maddie was saying about explain, show, practice, feedback. I did another model that is, I do, you watch, I do, you help, and then you do, and I watch. So I did it, and then I asked you to help me, and I called on people and everyone. I said, what do I do next? And we went through that process of adding letters 5 times for each letter of my name. So that we went through that so many times that hopefully, everyone was able to add the letters to their name. So everyone was successful to adding the letters. And then I should have spent a little bit more time on the background, but most of you were able to add your background. Then after you added your letters and your background, then you had to learn how to animate them. And this is where I wanted to have just-in-time help for you, so that if you had questions, and maybe there might be a way I could have encouraged you more to ask questions, because I would like to be there for that just-in-time help, but not everyone asks questions. So there were some videos in CS First that showed you if you got to a certain point, like Justin looked at it, and there was a certain point where their video is there, and provide some additional videos, and even going to YouTube and looking at videos. That's a good idea. And also putting you into groups so that you can help each other. Those are different ways that I could provide scaffolding for you. But I did provide some videos right in the presentation about how to copy and paste code, upload images, and sequence animations, because those are 3 things that people asked for in the past many times. But I think what I'm going to do is take those 3 along with several others and just make one page with all of the help there, and you can click on what you need. Okay, so that's how I plan to help you, by putting you in a situation where it probably was challenging for most of you, and tried to provide as much help as I could so that you could be successful. And pretty much there were a lot of successful animations. I wanted to just show you some because you have to be really proud of this. So I'm going to come back to Emily's for a minute. Let's look at Emma's. So let's look at Emma's. Watch. So she's got the letters moving. She's got some color going on here. She's got the letters talking. And then notice how the crab is going there and grabbing each letter. Okay, that was a little tricky to do. And then I think she added some sound at the end. Okay, so really good. And if you look at Emma's code, see, for each thing, she has the code. When I receive this, what do I do? When it's clicked, this is what happens. So she did that. And then at the end, she has this music playing. Okay, glide for so seconds, broadcast. Okay, so she did a lot of work on this. So good job, Emma. Let's look at Emery's. Okay, Emery's talking here. She's got her letters getting larger. And then she's got the images moving around, stars moving around. And at the end, it's growing, and then she puts the end. She changed the background. So good job, Emery. Let's look at, here's Hannah's. Look how colorful hers is, and watch. It's just so pretty to look at. She's got the colors going on there. She's got the stars all twirling. So not real complex, but very, very pretty. And if you look at her code, let's look at her, take a look at her code. You know, she's got a lot of things going on here. When the flag is clicked, she's going to change color. She's going to glide to a certain place and then wait and then glide to another place. Okay, she's got that for the H. So notice that for each letter, she has a similar code here. She may have copied and pasted it. And then for each star, she has a similar code too, but they're in different places. So nice job, Hannah. Okay, let's look at Maddie's. Watch this yellow fish. So interesting what she did with her yellow fish here. Okay, she's got her letters spinning, and notice that the yellow fish is turning into different things. So Maddie did something different. If we look at that yellow fish, notice what she's saying, switch the costume. So here, it's not just a yellow fish, but she has different color fish here. She has to keep switching costumes. So she went outside the box a little bit with that one. And then here's Haley's. Let's look at Haley's. Got a lot of fish themes going on. Okay, she's got her letters moving out. And then she has her objects moving around the screen. And the letters go back. So she resets it so she can start the next one. Okay, here's one that was actually from a class from last year, but this student actually had so much fun with this and spent a lot of time. She actually created a story out of it. So let's take a peek at Maya's. Notice she had sound. She's got a whole story here. I'm going to stop it just due to time, but notice, and then she has a lot of things going on after her story. Things move, there's a fight. She really got into this and made it into a whole story, which you can do with Scratch. There's so many things you can do with Scratch. In fact, here's one thing for your final exam. Doing a Scratch project is one of the choices that you're going to have, is to take something that you learned in class and turn it into a Scratch project. So here is a student who took the word scaffolding and then tried to explain what scaffolding is through an animation. So let's watch what this student did. So here's someone who's confused about how to sort. So the teacher's going to provide some scaffolding by giving a hint. How about things that fly? And then notice how she's asking the question, can you think of another way? Where we went over differences between animals. So notice the scaffolding here, and how this project, it's a little story that the student created, but it's really demonstrating an example of scaffolding and showing that this student really understands what scaffolding is and gives a good example. So that's something that if you had fun with Scratch and you want to create a project for your final exam, one of the choices is going to be to pick a topic and create an animation for it. So, and there's lots of examples here. I'm not going to go through them all today, but there's lots of examples that other students did. Someone did operant conditioning, someone did attention control, someone did power thinking. So there's a lot of in classical conditioning here. So there's many different things you could do with this by creating a story to demonstrate your understanding. The last example I just want to show you is Emily's, because Emily put a lot of time and effort into this. I have a couple of little suggestions, because one thing that I noticed is, so for what Emily did is she put a bunch of instruments in there, and she took the time to put many different sounds into the instrument. But what we don't have is, the one thing that was missing was playing the sounds. So putting the sounds in this is one step, but she needed one more step. So I'm going to show the other step, and that is to actually say to play the sound. So watch when I click sound, I can say play a sound. And I'm going to take this repeat, and I'm going to kind of put it in there. So she had several sounds. I'm just going to drag a bunch of them in there. And then see how, if you're really instrumental, you can decide which sound is going to be played in what order. Now, I'm not very instrumental. I'm just going to randomly choose each sound so that each sound gets played. But it's not going to sound very pretty because I didn't do it intentionally. But you can look at what you can do with sounds. You can decide which sounds to play. You can change the pitch. You can change the effect of the pitch. You can change the volume. You can change, even within the sound, you can make it faster or slower or louder or softer or fade in or fade out. So there's a lot of things. If you actually wanted to play with this and make the sound be amazing, if you're a musician, you can do that. And then we just need, when do we want this to happen? So we're going to say that when I receive, the show begins. So I added sound. She added the sounds. All I did was add the code that will make the sound play. And I did it with her other instruments as well. The other thing that I noticed was she has her dinosaur introducing everything. And one of the things that she didn't have is when the flag was clicked. I forget what she had, something else here. And so when I clicked the flag, nothing happened. So you have to be careful in your animation that if you want things to happen, you have to either tell them, click the space bar if the space bar is going to start things off or something, because the people looking at your animation don't know what to do. The most thing they'll know what to do is to click the flag. So the first thing that happens in your animation, you should have when the green flag is clicked. So now let's watch Emily's animation when we click the green flag. Okay, so letters are going all over the place. And now all of the instruments are moving and they're playing. And they don't sound very pretty. That's my fault because I just put the sounds in randomly. And it would take a while to make it sound good. You'd really have to use your musicianship to decide what letters and what order you could actually have it play a song. So Emily, good job on that. And so you can see, yes, it would be great if we had more than 2 lessons, maybe a third or a fourth lesson. But for those of you who really didn't like this, I didn't want to extend your frustration. But if anyone wants to learn more, I'll be glad to have a session with you and share with you because I love teaching this. It's so much fun. Before we go on to the next thing, does anyone have any burning questions that you want me to answer before we move away from scratch? Okay. Then let's have another example before we get into your assignment for this week, which is creating a task analysis. So here is an example. I was working with some 3rd grade class, and the teacher wanted to teach the students the process of researching. Okay, how do you, when you're in 3rd grade, how do you research something? So we decided we were going to do this project about how animals communicate with each other. And she found this little inquiry process steps that she wanted her students to know about these steps. That when I want to do some research, I'm curious about it, and then I gather some information, and then I use reasoning to try to figure things out and put them together, and then I reflect on it. So what we had to do was we had to break down each part of the process into these smaller components and determine which part of the process that might be challenging, and then develop scaffolding ideas for just-in-time help when needed for this 3rd grade class. So here's what the teacher and I came up with. How can we spark curiosity in the children? So we decided that we were going to play some animal sounds and see if they could identify what this sound was. Okay, so that was going to start us off, and hopefully it would get students to be curious about how the different kind of animal sounds. Then we thought as a class, we would brainstorm different ways that students can communicate with their own family and friends. So we would, just fill up the board with a bunch of ideas from the kids, how they communicate with others. Then we were going to look at pictures of animals, and they were going to circle parts of the body that might be used to communicate and talk about that. And the other thing was, in order to spark their curiosity, let them pick their own animal so they would feel ownership and be curious about the animal that they chose. So this was the scaffolding that we came up with ahead of time to help spark curiosity in the children about their animal that they were going to research. Then what we did is we gathered appropriate and worthy resources that were 3rd grade ready. So we didn't want them just going on Google and searching for their animal and how animals communicating, and they'd end up getting to resources that were too hard for them or maybe even inappropriate. So we found some websites, National Geographic Kids for one of them, that has videos that were at their level that they could watch small videos. that had some websites that were easy for them to read and understand, these little books, little kids' first big book of animals, where they could get information about their animal that was at grade level for them to read and watch and listen to. So that was the scaffolding we provided for them to gather data. So we sparked their curiosity, and then we had them gathering data. Now, if you're in third grade, you may or may not be able to organize your information and know what kind of data to gather. So we provided them with a graphic organizer and said to them, just like with that scaffolding example, look for sounds. What kind of sounds does your animal make? What are the structures of their body parts? Like, what body parts do they have that can help them communicate? And then what habitat do they live in? Where do they live? What other kinds of creatures or animals are around them? And then a category for other. What else might you find when you're doing your research to find what can help your animal communicate? So we gave them this graphic organizer. It was a piece of paper that was on their desk. So while they were looking at their iPads or their computers and gathering this information, they were actually writing on this piece of paper and gathering information. And then we looked at, okay, we want them to then take that information and put it together in some kind of product that they could then share with the others. So they had to kind of put this information together into something. So they had a choice, and we said they could do a Flipgrid video or make a book, an ebook. Now, these were two kinds of technology that they already knew about. So this isn't something new they were learning. We used Flipgrids in this class for a different project, and we used Book Creator for a different project. So they weren't necessarily learning a new technology, but they got to choose, do I want to make a little video, or do I want to make an ebook that's interactive with my information? So, and what we did was we modeled for them, some examples of some Flipgrid videos and some books, and kind of get them to choose. And then we provided specific directions and help. So the teacher and I were both in the classroom, and we were with the students and gave them just-in-time help as they were creating their book or their video. And they had several days in the classroom to do this. So that's an example of how I actually did this in a classroom with a third grade teacher, and how we did it in our class with the animated name project. Now, your task is going to be to select a physical or cognitive procedure or skill that you want to teach someone. Make sure it's complex. Don't make it be really simple, like how to fill an ice cream cone, okay? Something that has several steps, that's kind of complex. And I want you to develop a task analysis for the skill. Now, what is that going to look like? You're going to break down each part of the process and think about what are all the smaller steps, and then determine which parts of that process might be challenging and develop some scaffolding ideas for them. So in Google Classroom, here's your assignment. This is what it looks like, and you each have your own copy of it. So here is some examples. I gave you the animated name project, and it gave an example for you. And I gave you the steps. So specifically list the steps. So here you're going to, what is the procedure or skill? And then here you're going to list the many steps that it takes to actually teach someone that procedure or skill. Then you're going to have to click at least 2 of these and explain how you're going to scaffold for it. And I've actually provided you from some scaffolding for your scaffolding. So in other words, I've given you some examples for types of scaffolding you might explain. So you might explain that I'm going to model this, I'm going to demonstrate this, or I'm going to provide a hint for this. Or we learned about shaping. See how this project is really putting together a lot of the things we learned before? Like, how might you use shaping to help them with that? How can I provide specific directions or rubric? So think about it. Think about something that you actually might teach someone and what are the steps for that. So this is the project that you're going to do. You're going to start it today, and then you have Thursday to do it. So I want you to get started now so that I can be here for any questions you might have. And then you can continue working on it on Thursday. We're actually not going to meet on Thursday. I want you to take the time to work on this project and really take your time and do a good job with it. Because like I said, this task analysis process is the most useful skill that I learned in my whole undergraduate career. And I want to make sure that you all really take this seriously and do a good job with it. So now I'd like you to put in the chat or speak out loud, what are you wondering about, or what questions do you have about this project?
Just to be sure, for this assignment, we're picking our own task or we're going off the video teacher?
You're going to think of your own task. So for example, someone in one of my classes was a baton twirler, and she decided to teach others how to twirl a baton. Does that help you, Josie?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Baking is a good skill, Carly, but you could, but you're going to choose what to bake. Okay, so baking a specific thing. So maybe baking brownies or something like that. So think about something that you already know how to do and you're pretty good at, and you're going to teach others.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So what I want everyone to do now is to think about, take a couple of minutes and think about a specific procedure or skill, something that you're going to teach others. Open up the task analysis assignment, and at the very least for now, the next 5 minutes, put in what your procedure or skill is going to be, and then start thinking about the steps. Okay? And I'm going to provide you with some feedback as I'm looking at them. I might give you some feedback or some suggestions. Some people sometimes make their steps too general and they need to be more specific. So be real specific with your steps and break down the task. Okay, so that's what I'd like you to complete right now is choose a procedure or skill and at least start to put in the steps and be really specific with your steps. I'm going to kind of peek at, I'll be able to see yours. I'm going to peek at them, and I might go in on your document and actually write a comment on the side of your document. Okay, if there's no more questions, I'm going to set you free to work on this. It's 10:37, so we have about 10 more minutes, and we're just going to come back the last 3 minutes and just share what our skills are in the chat.